So for starters, these are some of the sections that you should absolutely include on your resume at all times. Good grades, relevant coursework, college major, education. Obviously, these are no-brainers, but you would also need to include internship experiences, volunteerism, leadership, teamwork on your resume. Critical thinking and communication, you can't create sections for that. I mean, how do you show critical thinking on a resume, right? You don't necessarily create a critical thinking section and say, I am a great critical thinker, because that actually shows nothing about your critical thinking skills on a resume. But again, if you've been to study abroad, faced with different challenges from, again, foreign government bureaucracy to adapting into a new culture, new workplace, a new school, and maybe learn a new language, that shows critical thinking. So you don't need to necessarily scream critical thinking, but you can show those type of skills through your study abroad experiences. But on the right-hand side, I've created specific sections for you to highlight and showcase your study abroad experience. The first thing is obviously education. You need to indicate your study abroad experience, the college that you attended, and I'm gonna show here in a second, like I kind of created one on Word and then cropped and kind of pasted on my presentation. So I'm gonna show you here in a second, but briefly, always mention your study abroad experience in the education portion. The other place would be professional experience, especially if you did some job shadowing while abroad. Maybe you volunteered for an organization. Let's say you are studying elementary school education and you volunteered at 3 different elementary schools, again, in Venezuelan Valley from my example from the first presentation. If that's the case, you can't just say study abroad in the education section and think that you did a great job. You're actually missing out on a lot of things that you can effectively showcase with descriptive bullets under professional experience section. So that's another section that you should absolutely showcase your study abroad experience, especially if it's coupled with internship experiences, job shadowing, and volunteerism. The other thing that you can do, there's no limit with the number of bullets or sections we can create on a resume, as long as it is relevant to the position. So you can take it a step further and maybe create a study abroad experience section. And then in descriptive bullets, you can literally highlight all the things that we discussed so far, from problem solving to adaptability to perspective, and how gaining new perspectives made you a great team player because you're open to different ideas now. You're more open to honoring different opinions. And if they're different, you learn to be more tolerant about those things, right? So you can do that under study abroad experience. And obviously, always create a skills section on your resume. And under those skills section, put all of these buzzwords that we've been discussing so far, highlight them on the skills portion along with your language skills and abilities. So I'm really hoping that everything is clear so far. Let's see. The other point that I want to highlight here is that anyone looks at your resume, internalizes information from top to bottom. So when figuring out how to list your study abroad experience on your resume, imagine being on the other side of the table looking at an applicant's resume. So what information do you find yourself looking for? What stands out to you? What information seems buried like beneath less pertinent information? And structure your resume strategically to highlight the most important details about your experience. For example, if you are studying international relations here at WVU, what do you think the most important portion is going to be on your resume? Your part-time Chick-fil-A experience, or McDonald's experience, or working as a student worker here at WVU, versus you studying abroad literally studying international relations abroad in a different university, and maybe again taking on different projects while studying abroad. That's going to be more relevant. So whenever you're creating this document, put your education first and study abroad experience second, and then other experience. And there you can show, again, your McDonald's experience, but obviously use one bullet highlighting the transferable skills of communicated effectively and professionally with upper management and coworkers to create a welcoming environment in a fast-paced operations or something like that. Don't put flipped burgers, mop the floor, because nobody's interested in those things. By working at McDonald's, you're still working on your communication skills. You're still working on your teamwork skills, right? And you try to highlight those things on your resume, but again, make sure you prioritize effectively by focusing on what's important and not focusing on, you know, well, I worked at McDonald's for the last semester, but my study abroad was 2 years ago, so I must put my McDonald's experience first because I'm following a reverse chronological order. Don't do that. Always put the most relevant things first and then least relevant at the bottom. All right, so here's an example. Let's say, let's put this here. Let's say you have studied in Costa Rica, New Zealand, and South Africa. You know, you did different exchange programs in Japan. When you create your education section, don't just put your American education here. Absolutely, at all times, keep your education abroad experience on your resume. Okay, but that again should not be the only and primary way of showing your international experience. You should also include other bullets, just like the study abroad experience here. So this person, they were a study abroad participant and they volunteered at healthcare clinics, and they use really intelligent bullets to highlight their experiences in South Africa, provided weekly support to 4 nurses at this facility. And they did this, especially if this person is studying like something in the healthcare field. I mean, can you see how valuable it is? But even if not, like, so this person is studying intercultural relations, that's still relevant experience because they were in a different culture. So again, if we had active participants, I would have asked you this question. Do you think this candidate did a great job of highlighting all of their study abroad experiences? Probably not, because they only focused on the technical things, technical experiences like volunteering, traveling, working with different people. So they really focused on some of the, again, technical things, but they didn't really honor the communication, problem solving, adaptability, like all those things that we talked about in the other presentation. So I specifically did this to show you that this is a great example, but it's still not enough. You can highlight the technical things along with some of the really important core communication and cultural adaptability, like problem solving skills that you learn or you kind of improve upon while studying abroad. So here's an example. I'm going to talk about writing better bullets here, because a lot of times people write bullets like this: help manage children at a summer camp, which tells me nothing as the reader. You have to be very measurable, specific, objective, and need to focus on accomplishments when it comes to resumes. So if that person maybe put a bullet similar to this on that section, study abroad section, it would have made it even more impactful. Something like communicated with locals, general public and healthcare professionals, and Spanish daily, which improves spoken and written language skills from intermediate to full professional proficiency. What do you guys think? That's pretty good, right? So that's what I mean by don't just focus on your technical skills, but again, highlight the language skills, the adaptability, problem solving, perspective, and all that. The next thing that I would like to highlight is being specific. communicated with clients and worked to achieve their needs, it tells me nothing as a reader. I don't know what the client's needs are. What did you do to achieve their needs? Like, I have no idea. But this right here is more specific, and that's what you need to do when creating bullets. Another good example here would be this person under the study abroad experience could have included something like this. Successfully navigated cultural barriers and unique stressors of living abroad, promoting flexibility, resilience, and problem-solving skills. I'm literally killing multiple birds with one stone. I'm talking about barriers, overcoming barriers, basically developing resilience by overcoming stressors, right? Flexibility, problem-solving skills, everything in one bullet. And this is really what you really need to start thinking about doing to showcase your experiences on a resume. The other thing is being objective. Again, phenomenal Spanish speaker, it tells me nothing, or experienced verbal communicator. Everybody thinks that they're great at something, but it's their subjective opinion. I'm not going to believe in it as an HR professional until you show me proof. If instead of putting experienced verbal communicator on your resume, you talked about something like deliver 10 Ignite style presentations to audiences ranging from 10 to 100 individuals on the topics of ethics in the workplace, that tells me that you are indeed an experienced communicator and you're really comfortable with public speaking skills. But this right here is doing nothing for me. Now, focus on accomplishments. Again, manage social media accounts tells me nothing, but you need to specify what social media. Created and managed Twitter and Instagram accounts, which resulted in a 5% increase in revenue over 3 months. Now, that's a little dramatic. You can't always measure your accomplishments in the sense of a percentage, but this person could have also said something like created and managed Twitter and Instagram accounts, which reached to audiences of 40,000 viewers in a matter of a week. So something like that. It's still kind of accomplishment oriented. It's still measurable, but don't just say manage social media accounts. It's just really not doing anything for the viewer. And think about your study abroad experiences in a similar light too. Learn to be adaptable and culturally aware doesn't tell me anything. You really need to tell me some of the problems you face, some of the challenges you had to overcome to become adaptable or to become culturally aware. So hopefully this is giving you some perspective in terms of how you should effectively showcase some of these things on a resume. Now, it's time for a cover letter. The thing with cover letters is that oftentimes they're overlooked. People, even though the job application specifically asks for a cover letter, people don't include it, don't know what to do with it. It's such a mistake because cover letters are really, really impactful. Some employers are going to read your cover letter first before even they check your resume, or they check your resume and look for a cover letter to see which one of your qualifications you actually chose to highlight on your cover letter. Now, the problem with cover letters and mistake that many people I see making is they use cover letters as a reiteration of their resume, meaning their resume already talks about studied abroad in Venezuela, worked as a elementary school teaching assistant for the local teachers. You already talk about these things on your resume. Don't use your cover letter to reiterate that information. Something like, my name is Chala Chidik. Currently, I'm a senior studying business administration here at West Virginia University. In my second year of education, I went to Venezuela and participated in a study abroad trip, which provided me with great insights. In this trip, I volunteered to do, don't do this. they already have that information on your cover letter. It's not going to do anything. You're just repeating the same things and it's not being impactful. Instead, when you create that resume, you need to kind of find maybe 5 top skills and qualifications that are really important for that employer. Okay, 3 to 5. And then kind of choose to talk about and highlight those things on your cover letter. An example of it would be, my semester abroad in Japan taught me how to quickly adapt to new environments and effectively cooperate with people of diverse backgrounds. And then you kind of expand more upon that in one of those paragraphs. Or you can say something like, as an international exchange student in Spain, I learned how to effectively communicate in a cross-cultural environment. Then you take up the next few sentences describing exactly how you were able to effectively communicate in a cross-cultural environment. Maybe the people that you dealt with, maybe you being the kind of mediator between English speakers and Spanish speakers. Things like that need to be shown on a cover letter to kind of give more basis to these statements. Because again, these are so broad and it's your job to be very descriptive and specific in describing these experiences. Okay, I'm really hoping this is making sense. It's tough to be just talking and talking with no feedback. If you all have any questions, any concerns at any point, just type it in the chat box and I will address it in real time. Alrighty. So your cover letter obviously needs to be compelling. It needs to kind of show proof of strong written and verbal communication skills. That kind of needs to give a deeper look at why you are qualified for the job. So that's another thing that you can accomplish with a cover letter. At some point in one of the paragraphs, you need to make a case for yourself and why you are the most qualified candidate for the position, and also why you're specifically interested in working in that organization. Why not organization X, Y, and Z and them specifically? What kind of draws you in about that organization? Again, you need to do some company research, organization research, go to their website, look at some of the mission and values and core, things that are important to the organization. If diversity is important, if cultural awareness is important, well, guess what? You are one of the prime candidates because you've experienced it firsthand, right? If they are in a international line of business, well, guess what? You have international experience. If they focus on problem solving in kind of modern day operations, well, guess what? You know exactly how to solve problems because you dealt with all the difficulties associated with being abroad, being on your own, being resourceful, overcoming challenges. And you really, again, need to highlight these things on your cover letter with a lot of substance to them. Again, don't just make it a recap of your resume and customize it for each position. Another example here that I kind of inserted is, as an international student with the University of Thessaloniki, I can't even say it, I understand the benefits and challenges of working within a culturally diverse project group. And then expand more upon it. What were some of the challenges that you were faced? How did you overcome it? And it's really important to be able to do these things. Okay, now, before I get to the questions, I want to touch base with the interviewing really quickly. I did not include the interviewing piece on this presentation because originally I made a lot of changes to reflect study abroad specifically, but interviewing is not a part of this presentation. Instead, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you on our website how you can find some of the commonly asked interview questions, general questions and behavior-based questions, and how you can use your study abroad skills and qualifications to answer some of those commonly asked questions. So let me stop sharing my screen and then reshare my browser. Okay, Megan, is it visible? Can you all see the interview questions on my screen? So, awesome. So here's how you navigate to get to this PDF. You go to careerservices.wvu.edu, and under students, we have a lot of information for you, from building a resume to dining etiquette to salary negotiation, job search process for international students, like all kinds of information. But you're going to basically click on prepare for an interview. And here you'll find common interview questions. So if you click on that, you will have these interview questions, which is great. Now, in an interview, you'll be asked two types of questions. General questions kind of aim to get to know you a little bit better. Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Describe your communication, interpersonal and computer skills. How do you handle stress? These are some of the general questions that they will ask you, and they are genuinely interested in your answer and your personality in asking these questions. So kind of be your authentic self. Obviously, in your strengths, make sure to insert some of those key qualifications that we've been talking about for the past hour and a half, and make it really impactful with examples. For example, if they ask you, what are your top strengths? Maybe tell me about your top 3 strengths. Don't just say, I'm a hardworking person, I am really culturally aware, and I'm a great problem solver. Well, that's not going to do anything for you. Nothing. You need to be able to give some substance, just like the cover letter and the resumes. And you really need to say things like, I think one of my greatest strengths is that I am a hardworking person, and that can be demonstrated through all my experiences and things that I indicated on my resume. As a college student here at West Virginia University, I not only took on 15 credit hour coursework every semester, but also tried to be active in my community and volunteered for different organizations. I became the vice president of our Delta Sigma Kappa professional organization for business management students. And as a vice president, I was responsible for also event creation and navigating the engagement through COVID-19. And a lot of the responsibility actually fell onto me. And I did a lot to kind of keep reviving our student organization and the engagements, the things that we do. The other thing that shows my hardworking nature is that despite all of these engagements, all the things that I was involved, I was still able to maintain a 3.7 GPA throughout my studies. So that right there is how you answer the first strength. If you're going to talk about cultural awareness, then you will start saying things like, well, last semester, I was really fortunate to participate in a study abroad education program for 6 months in Costa Rica. And through this experience, I mean, I've just learned a lot of new things about the Costa Rican culture, the natives there, their school system, blah, blah, blah. You kind of give those experiences and describe how those things made you culturally aware. So don't list things, add substance to them. The other thing that they will do in an interview setting is that they will start asking you behavior-based questions. So here's the difference. While the general questions are created to get to know you a little bit better, behavior-based questions are trying to understand a certain skill set and whether you have it. So you can't just give them a general answer and hope that it's going to fly. You really need to start thinking about stories and give them a story of a time when you did something. And you need to follow the STAR technique. So you quickly talk about the situation. Back when I was in Tokyo for my study abroad trip, I wasn't aware of some of the cultural implications kind of actively practiced in a workplace. So when I walked through the door, so like I'm making it up on the spot right now. Can you tell how obvious it is that I did not think this through, that I didn't practice this, and I'm trying to come up with details to go along with my story? Please don't do that. You have to be very prepared and kind of know your stuff before you walk into an interview. So the best thing you can do for yourself is kind of follow my advice from the beginning of this second presentation and think through your experiences and jot down some stories kind of following the STAR technique. Okay, so situation, task. You're going to focus more on the actions you took. So if you didn't know the culture, and in exchanging business cards, Japanese people tend to be very respectful, and they kind of hand it to you with both hands, and they bow and bow and bow, and you didn't know, and you just kind of like gave it with one hand, and then you didn't bow, you turned around, and they were offended by it. And then you realized that, and then you indicated that this is your first time in Japan, that you're not really aware of the customs, but you're really open to learning, and ask them if they could teach you certain things. And you ended up having a great interaction and learned a lot from that experience. That's how you set up the story and apply the STAR technique. But again, I intentionally did not practice this, knowing I wouldn't be able to wing it on the spot. And if you don't practice it, you're going to do the mistake that I just made. You are going to dwell on the little details, not knowing where to go from there, and then kind of like drawing, circles around and around and around. Okay, so this is basically how you tackle behavior-based questions. And again, look at this question, for example. Describe a time when you were faced with a stressful situation and demonstrated coping skills. I got lost in Tokyo and Shinjuku Station, and like, it is the busiest train station in the world with 3 million riders every day. And the letters were in a different alphabet. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to communicate. People didn't speak English, and I freaked out. Well, as a result, I navigated that problem, that situation, in a certain way. And then you start communicating that to the interviewer. Again, you need to set up the STAR technique though. Another example here would be, give me a specific example of a time when you use logic or you solve the problem. Well, that's a great candidate for kind of tapping back into your study abroad experiences and problem solving. Another thing would be, let's see here. What's your typical way of dealing with conflict? Give me an example. Well, if you had a conflict with your landlord in Germany, that could be a good example, because not only did you have a conflict, you also had to overcome some of the cultural differences solving that conflict, or the language barrier. The other thing could be, give me an example of when you showed initiative and took the lead. I talked to you about how studying abroad kind of expands or enhances your initiative, taking initiative skills. Well, that's a great candidate right there. So you know how to have access to this document. What I urge all of you to do is, again, just to repeat, reflect back on your experiences, come up with stories, briefly put them in keywords and phrases, and then start reflecting them on your resume with the examples that I've given you. Put them on your cover letter and use them in your interviewing skills. I know this is a really quick and fast presentation. I try to deliver a lot of content and information in presenting. So if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, just do reach out to me or to Career Services Center. If you are creating your resume and still kind of having trouble with reflecting the right things, you can definitely schedule an individual appointment to be seen by a career development specialist, which we have 6 more of me in our office. And we are more than happy to help you with any of the questions that you might have, or, if you need any help with the interviewing process, document creation, or effectively speak on your study abroad experiences. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now and see if we have any questions or comments.
Hello, I had a quick question. First of all, thanks so much for the presentation. It was really detailed, and I think provided a lot of excellent examples for our students to use. We're starting to see quite a few more virtual experiences with our partners where students might be able to take online classes with those partners, or they might have like guest lectures or something in their regularly scheduled WBU classes, or even we're having some student organizations kind of team up with student orgs overseas. What kind of skills do you think students gain from those, since it's a little bit of a different experience? Or are you able to speak to that at all as something that they can still add value to their future career?
I mean, a few things here. COVID is really unfortunate. It's literally affecting all aspect of our lives. And in terms of those online engagements, I think you can use them in a number of different ways. The first and foremost would be you're really disappointed that your actual experience has been interfered with this virus, but you are really eager to learn about different cultures, interact with people from other countries to the point where you're willing to go through an online program or sit through online presentations just to be able to get even the virtual version of that experience. That could be one thing. The other thing is that whenever you're interacting with someone who is from a different culture, the language barrier, the culture barrier will be there. And now there's an additional barrier of not having an in-person communication. So when I first moved to United States about 6 years ago, one of the things that I dreaded the most was speaking to people over the phone. Because seeing their body language, especially in a language where it's not your native tongue, is really helpful. But if they're having, again, maybe Zoom conferences where people have the audio, but not necessarily the video, with the accents and everything, it becomes really difficult to navigate. Maybe they can speak about those experiences and how it helped them grow in a different way. I mean, there's really not much they can do aside from focusing on the silver linings and, still focusing on some of the positive experiences that they drive from this unfortunate time frame that we're going through. But again, I think their willingness to still interact with people from different cultures and still, communicating with them virtually, although it may not be exactly the same as, doing this in person, it still gives them some level of experience and shows their eagerness and determination or investment, I guess, in getting to know different cultures and interacting with these people. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, that's good. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some things and you will apply them in your, career development process. And again, my name is Chala Chedik, and I'm more than happy to work with you all with anything career development related. Come see us. We're again doing virtual appointments through the COVID-19 pandemic and hopefully resume to our in-person appointments sometime in the future.